People ask what I do, and I usually tell them I'm a factory worker, nothing more, nothing less. I run an injection molding machine that smells like melted plastic and motor oil and makes a sound you eventually stop hearing. It's not the kind of job you bring up at high school reunions or family barbecues, but it pays the bills and gives me a rhythm. The machine doesn't care who your parents are, or how many degrees you have, or whether you show up in a pressed suit or steel-toed boots. It only wants you to show up. And I always did. The strange thing is, I used to think that showing up was enough. That if I worked hard, stayed out of trouble, didn't ask for much, the people who were supposed to love me would love me anyway. But family has rules no one writes down. I broke one the day I turned down a scholarship to stay in town and help out after Dad died. The day I took a job instead of chasing a degree. The day I decided stability mattered more than status. I thought she'd understand, Mom. I thought she'd see it as loyalty. But I realized now that loyalty only counts when it flows upward in our family. She wanted a lawyer. She got a line worker. That was enough to lose me my place. Let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to John Riley from South Africa. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. Mother's Day was the litmus test. She sent the invite out like she always did, a photo of roses with a long message that read like a Hallmark card fused with a sermon. I was on break, scrolling through the family WhatsApp group, half expecting to see some passive-aggressive jab about who hadn't called lately or who still owed her for last Christmas. But instead, I saw a clean list of names. My brother Martin, my sisters Alana and Renee, even my cousin Kev who still lives with his mom at 35. Every one of them was included. Every one of them was addressed directly. And at the bottom of the message, in words that burned more for how calm they were, she wrote, "To all my successful children, I'm proud of the people you've become. Some make choices that reflect our values. Others don't. I no longer count them among my children." I read it twice, then a third time, just to be sure I wasn't misinterpreting it. But the meaning wasn't hidden. It was etched into the digital stone like a curse. I wasn't just excluded, I was erased. And what made it worse was the silence that followed. Nobody said anything. Not one of them. No one asked, "Wait, where's him?" No one tagged me. No one texted me on the side. I wasn't just cut off by her. I was left hanging by all of them like a ghost in a family I used to belong to. That silence was the worst part, because silence always means agreement in our house. I didn't respond. I didn't forward it to friends with a sarcastic caption. I didn't vent online. I just sat there on the back stairs outside the factory, my work gloves still in my lap, my coffee cold beside me, and my phone screen slowly dimming as if even the device wanted to look away. Something went still in me. Not broken. Just quiet. Like a part of me stopped expecting anything from her anymore. Like a door had shut, and I'd finally decided not to keep knocking. The hurt didn't come in one big wave, it came slow. A low tide dragging pieces of me out one by one. I deleted the family group chat, blocked notifications from my siblings, archived photos I used to scroll through when I missed them. There was no dramatic exit, no confrontation, just quiet subtraction. I know that seems cold, but when you're cut out like I was, you stop begging to be stitched back in. I had spent too many years trying to earn my place at a table where I was always asked to bring more and receive less. I told myself walking away was strength, but the truth is it was survival. Because if I had stayed, if I had swallowed that insult and smiled through the next family gathering, I think something vital in me would have snapped. I cried that night. Not the loud, explosive kind of crying you see in movies. Mine was the silent kind, the kind where you keep doing dishes or folding laundry or lying still in the dark and suddenly your face is wet and you're not sure when it started. I didn't miss her exactly. I missed who I thought she'd been. I missed the version of her I had kept alive in my head, the one who made hot cocoa with nutmeg when I was sick, who waited up with a towel the night I came home soaked from a broken-down car. But that version of her had died long before the message. Maybe she never existed. The next morning, I got up and went to work. Same boots, same machine, Same tired jokes from Jerome about how I needed to date a nurse so he could fake a back injury and retire early. I laughed like I always did, but inside, something had shifted. I wasn't just working anymore. I was building something. I didn't know what yet, but I could feel it, like bricks being laid, one shift at a time. I didn't tell anyone what happened. Not at work. Not at the gym. Not even the guy at the bodega who always asked how my mom was doing. I just started living like someone with nothing to prove to anyone but himself. That was the year everything changed. Not all at once. Slowly. The same way a cold morning becomes afternoon. I picked up extra shifts. Took night classes. Taught myself things I used to think were too hard for someone like me. And every time I felt like quitting, I remembered that message. I remembered the way my name had vanished like it never mattered. And I told myself, you don't need to be seen by her to become something real. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't chasing applause. I was just learning how to live without waiting for a mother's approval. And once you learn that, you become dangerous. I didn't leave like some big storm. There was no slammed door, no voicemail left at 2 a.m. telling her what she'd done to me. That kind of exit would have given her too much power. Instead, I disappeared in the quiet way people never see coming. I stopped replying to messages that barely came. I skipped birthdays, skipped Christmas, skipped the anniversaries of Dad's death where she'd always use his memory to play puppet strings on the rest of us. She didn't even ask where I went. That was the most revealing part. My absence didn't register as a loss. Not to her. I moved to a one-bedroom apartment across town, small, concrete floors, no balcony, but it felt like mine. Clean walls, clean start. I bought cheap second-hand furniture and a quiet kettle that took forever to boil. I started reading more. Not novels. Manuals, books about systems, things I could build. I'd sit in silence after work, sweat drying on my back, learning about programmable logic controllers, statistical process control, supply chain bottlenecks. I wasn't trying to get somewhere. Not at first. I was just trying to make sense of things. Because when your family cuts you out, you need something else to organize your life around. Knowledge was clean, predictable. It didn't lie to me. I didn't speak to any of my siblings for almost 2 years. I saw their lives from a distance the way people watch shows they've stopped caring about, casually, when bored, then with a pinch of shame. My brother bought a house. My sister had a third baby. No one called. Not once. It was like they were all under some agreement not to speak my name. Like my exile had been quietly negotiated over dinner one night, and they'd signed the dotted line. I used to think blood meant something. Now I think blood is just biology. Loyalty, presence, that's real family. I had neither. Mom never reached out. She didn't block me. She didn't delete me. But she treated me like a stain she'd already wiped clean. She'd post long Facebook status updates about being a mother of 3 incredible kids, and I'd just stare at the number. 3. As if I'd been an error in the math, corrected. As if I'd never existed at all. It's a strange kind of grief, being alive while someone pretends you're not. I stopped telling people I had siblings. Stopped mentioning her at all. I practiced saying my parents are gone to new people I met. It wasn't true, not fully, but emotionally, it was dead on. I started saving. Obsessively. No vacations, no new shoes, no fancy dinners. I put away every extra cent. There's something about being discarded that sharpens your instincts. I wanted options. I wanted leverage. I didn't know for what, not then. But I knew I'd need it. I also stopped waiting. Waiting for an apology. Waiting for someone in that family to grow a spine and ask me how I was doing. I realized if I waited, I'd die in that waiting room. So I built a life instead. Slow and steady. No fanfare. Just structure. Control. People at the factory started noticing. I took on more responsibilities. Solved problems no one wanted to touch. When the old line manager retired, they gave me his job. I moved from machine floor to office glass. Still covered in grease some days, but with a clipboard and a sense of forward motion. I didn't tell anyone from my past. I stopped performing success for people who couldn't care less. Let them think I was still sweeping floors. Let them believe I peaked in overalls. I wasn't hiding. I was growing in secret. Underground. Like roots. What surprised me most wasn't how much I could do, but how much quieter my mind became without them. Without her voice in my head. That passive-aggressive way she used to say, "Are you sure you want to live like that?" when I told her I was happy, without my brother's subtle dismissals or my sister's sideways compliments. I had always assumed that healing would feel like a warm embrace, but it felt more like cutting off a gangrenous limb. Brutal. Necessary. Afterward, everything else worked better. Cleaner. Lighter. I started breathing like I hadn't in years. I met Mira in my 3rd year of vanishing. She worked in logistics, smart, quiet, the kind of woman who didn't ask questions she hadn't earned the right to hear answers to. We met over a shared printer jam and a joke about toner that wasn't funny but landed anyway. Our first date was coffee in a parking lot after a long shift. No showboating. No fake charm. I told her up front I didn't talk to my family anymore. She didn't flinch. Just nodded and said, "Sometimes that's the healthiest thing." I could have cried on the spot, but I didn't. I just sipped my coffee and felt something thaw. Mira didn't try to fix me. That's why it worked. She gave me space to explain things on my own time, or not at all. Her version of love wasn't about rewriting my story, it was about making room for it. We moved in together 6 months later. Got married the next year. When she was pregnant with our first daughter, she asked if I wanted to tell my family. I said no. Not bitter. Just resolved. Some people earn their place in your life. Others walk out of it and expect the door to stay unlocked. I had changed the locks a long time ago. I still thought about her sometimes. My mother. I'd wonder if she ever missed me. If she remembered the kid who used to brush her hair while she read devotionals in the living room. But mostly, I stopped giving my pain the microphone. I had a new family now. A new rhythm. My daughter would never grow up thinking love was conditional. My wife would never feel erased because of her choices. I had vanished from their world, but I had reappeared in my own. That mattered more. The thing about disappearing is that people assume you're gone for good. They think silence is surrender. But I wasn't hiding. I was preparing. And someday they'd see. Not because I needed them to, but because the truth has a way of making itself known, even to people who choose blindness. Success didn't hit me like lightning. It crept in like a slow sunrise. Quiet. Reluctant. Most people think the turning point is dramatic, but for me, it was a spreadsheet. I built a new inventory model in my off hours just to see if I could make things flow better between the warehouse and the floor. I wasn't asked to. No one even knew I was doing it. But the plant manager saw it by accident one night when he borrowed my desk after hours. Next thing I knew, I was presenting it to regional. 2 weeks later, I had a title change, a raise, and my name on the corner of the daily operations report. I didn't tell anyone. Not Mira, not my friends, and definitely not anyone from the family I no longer claimed. It wasn't secrecy. It was protection. When you've been erased once, you learn not to hand people the pen again. I wore the same old boots to work, ate lunch with the same crew, but the shift had started. They were asking me to sit in meetings now, meetings where decisions got made. I said little. I watched, and I learned. I didn't want to be visible. I wanted to be undeniable. That's the difference between people who were given power and people who had to claw their way to it. I wasn't asking for a seat at their table. I was blueprinting my own. I enrolled in a business certification course on weekends. Quietly. No Instagram story. No backpatting. Just me, a coffee thermos, and 3-hour sessions on lean manufacturing, operations theory, and leadership frameworks. I wasn't doing it for prestige. I did it because I wanted to be irreplaceable. That word stuck with me. Replaceable. It's what I'd been to her. Disposable. One wrong turn, and she tossed me like an off-brand sweater. I never said it out loud, but in the back of my mind, I was preparing for the day she'd hear my name again. Not from me. From the world. Mira supported everything, even though I know it wasn't easy. I'd come home late, fall asleep with spreadsheets still open on the couch. She never guilted me. Never asked for more than I could give. Her way of showing love was different. She made sure there was always hot food when I got back. She left notes in my work bag. Sometimes she'd text me pictures of our daughter, holding my wrench set like it was a toy. Those things kept me grounded. That was the real success. I was building something bigger than money. I was building a name my child would never be ashamed to carry. The official promotion came on a Tuesday. I almost called in sick. My daughter had a fever. Mira was sleep deprived. I felt torn, but she looked at me and said, Go. Don't apologize for having something of your own. She kissed my forehead the way I imagine a mother should, and I left. I got the role of senior plant director that morning. Bigger office. Bigger pressure. Bigger pay. I still didn't tell anyone from the life I left behind. But they found out anyway. That's the thing about rising. You don't have to announce it. Your silence gets interrupted by the sound of your name being spoken by strangers. It started with a news article. Just a local piece. Factory worker to executive. The unlikely story of a self-taught operations head. My picture was in it. I didn't authorize it. The company did. Some PR play. I looked stiff in the photo, like I wasn't sure whether to smile or stay neutral. Within hours, the messages started. Not from Mom, not yet, but from Orbit, an old cousin, a friend of my brother's, someone who used to call me the underachiever behind my back. They all suddenly had congratulations to offer, old stories to resurface, new interests to take. I ignored most of them. The only person I cared about was my daughter, who drew me a picture of me in a tie and said, "Daddy builds big things." A week later, I got the text from Alana, my sister. Saw the article. Proud of you. Mom's been talking about it nonstop. She wants to reach out. I stared at the message so long my phone dimmed twice. The nerve of it. She wanted to reach out. As if there was a bridge still standing. As if her silence all those years didn't already speak louder than any apology could. I didn't reply. I let the message rot there. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. You don't owe access to people just because you share DNA. Especially not the ones who watched you drown and criticized your swimming technique. Then came the call. Not a number I recognized, but I knew the voice before she said a word. My mother. I just wanted to say, I saw the article. You've really made something of yourself. Her tone was bright, casual, like we'd just spoken last week. Like she hadn't deleted me from her child count and publicly labeled me a disappointment. I didn't say anything. I just listened. She went on. I always knew you had potential. You just needed to grow into it. I told your aunts about the article. They're all so proud. That's when I knew what this was. It wasn't reconciliation. It was reclamation. She didn't miss me. She missed the ability to point at me and say, "That's mine." I was now a trophy she wanted to dust off and display. Not because she regretted what she did, but because now I could be useful to her narrative again. Successful son. Self-made man. She wanted to act like none of it happened, like I hadn't spent years building a life in the ruins she left behind. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't curse. I just said, "Please don't call me again," and hung up. Mira watched me from across the kitchen that night. She didn't ask what the call was. Just walked over, touched my arm, and said, "Whatever it was, it doesn't change who you are now." And that was the truth. I wasn't her son anymore. Not in the way that mattered. I wasn't the family embarrassment, either. I was something else now. Something they never saw coming. And that was only the beginning. The receptionist didn't recognize her. That's the part that still makes me laugh when I think about it. All the years she spent measuring her worth by how loudly she could be heard in a room, and when she finally showed up in mine, she was just another name on the visitor log. Just a woman with a fake smile, a story rehearsed too long, and a last name that used to be mine. I was in the middle of reviewing a logistics contract when my assistant buzzed through. "There's a woman downstairs. Says she's your mother." For a second, I thought I misheard. Not because I hadn't anticipated something like this eventually, but because I hadn't expected it to come with that title still attached. Your mother. I stared at the intercom like it was taunting me. I hadn't heard her voice since the day she tried to reclaim me over the phone. I figured that burned bridge was finally ash. But some people don't believe fire applies to them. They think if they show up in person, history will fold itself around them like an old coat. They think the rules don't apply when blood's involved. I stood slowly, walked over to the window. My office looked down on the lobby. There she was, sitting on one of the leather benches like she owned it. Purse in her lap, heels too loud for the space. Her hair was styled, her makeup intact, like she was dressing for a reunion that had never been confirmed. She had that same pinched expression she always wore when entering places she felt she deserved to be but hadn't been invited to. I could already hear her lines in my head. "I just wanted to see you. I'm so proud. Let's start over." As if I was a machine she could reset. I told my assistant to call security. There was no hesitation, no inner debate, no weighing pros and cons. I didn't care who saw. I didn't care what rumors would ripple through the building. Because what mattered more than appearances was the message. To her, and to myself. I wasn't that boy anymore. The one who'd stare at his phone, wondering what he did wrong. The one who'd sit outside holiday dinners because he didn't want to make anyone uncomfortable. That boy was gone. I had buried him in silence, fed him with sweat, and resurrected a man who knew his own value. That man didn't explain himself. I watched through the glass as the guards approached her. She stood, confused at first, then indignant. She pulled out her phone, probably to prove she had a right to be there. Probably showed them my name, our last name, whatever text message she prepared in her drafts for the moment she thought I'd soften. The guards were calm. They'd been briefed. One of them pointed to the exit. She turned, looking upward, maybe hoping I'd be watching. She was right. I was. But not with guilt. With clarity. She tried to call out. I couldn't hear her words from up here, but I could see the shape of them. My name. Over and over. Like a spell she thought still worked. I turned away before they reached the door. Not because I couldn't watch, but because I didn't need to. The act was complete. The past had come knocking, and I had shown it the exit. Not with rage. Not with spectacle. With policy. That was the deepest cut. That I had elevated myself to a place where she no longer had emotional access. Just administrative restrictions. She didn't leave right away. That's what they told me later. She waited outside the building for over 20 minutes, standing there in heels too thin for the pavement. At one point, she called my name again, not in anger, in desperation. Then she sat on the front steps like she was hoping to be remembered, as if presence could undo everything. She looked so small from the CCTV footage. I didn't feel joy, but I didn't feel sorrow either. What I felt was freedom. The kind that comes not from revenge, but from being untouchable to the ones who once shattered you. I didn't mention the incident at home until the weekend. Mira had sensed something was off. I'd come home quiet, less hungry, eyes distant. We were putting our daughter to bed when she asked, "Did someone from your past show up?" I looked at her, long and hard. Then I nodded. She came to the office. Myra's eyes softened. And, I said, I had her removed. She didn't ask for details. She just kissed my temple and whispered, "Good." And in that moment, I knew I had chosen the right life. Later that night, I checked my email. There was one from my sister. Short, cold. "You didn't have to do that." That was all she wrote. No subject line. No warmth. Just that judgmental little thread pretending to be moral high ground. I didn't reply. Not because I couldn't defend myself, but because there are some people you don't explain healing to. Especially not the ones who helped you bleed in the first place. I archived the email, deleted her contact, then turned off my phone and held my daughter until she fell asleep. The next morning, I walked into work like nothing happened. My staff treated me the same. The factory still hummed. The emails still came. I was still CEO. That was the quiet miracle of it all. Life didn't tremble around her anymore. My life wasn't shaped by her weather. She had arrived thinking she could cast a shadow. She didn't realize I'd already built a life above her reach. But I knew this wasn't over. People like her don't leave clean. She would try again. Maybe through the media. Maybe through family. Maybe through guilt. But it didn't matter anymore. She had shown up to my world. And I had shown her the door. Next time, I would show her the cost. It started with a photo. Not of me, but of her. A distant shot, grainy, posted by someone's cousin on social media. Captioned, "Woman in tears outside corporate headquarters, says her son won't see her after years apart." The image didn't go viral, but it spread enough to reach the wrong people. A few local blogs picked it up. One article called it a tragic story of family estrangement in the age of success. No names were used, but people who knew. The factory workers, the night crew, even the janitor who'd seen the footage, everyone connected the dots. Whispers returned, but I stayed silent. I wasn't going to argue with people who hadn't earned my truth. Then came the letter, handwritten, delivered to my house, our house. No stamp, no postmark. She'd been here, while I was at work, while my wife and daughter were inside. That changed things. I didn't care about her desperation or her theater, but bringing it to my door? That was a line. Mira was shaken. She didn't say it outright, but I saw it in the way she triple-checked the locks that night, the way she didn't let our daughter play in the front yard the next day. The letter sat on the counter for 3 days before I read it. I don't know why I waited. Maybe part of me was still hoping she'd write something real. But when I opened it, all I found was manipulation dressed as mourning. She wrote like a mother who believed herself wronged. She said she missed me, that we all make mistakes, that family is forever, even when we fall out. She used the phrase "my son" 5 times. She apologized for how things were said, not for what she did. And then, there it was, "I'm not getting younger, and I don't want to leave this world without making things right." That line didn't hit me the way she hoped. Because I remembered something she said years ago, back when I was 16 and asked her why she always favored my siblings. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Respect is earned, not inherited." I guess she forgot that now. I called her. Mira didn't stop me. She just placed the baby monitor on the table and quietly stepped out of the room. I don't know what I expected when she picked up. Maybe silence. Maybe defiance. But she answered like she'd been waiting, like I'd finally come to my senses. "I knew you'd call," she said. That was her first mistake. Assuming she was still the one people returned to. I didn't greet her. I didn't ask how she was. I just said, "Don't come near my family again." She went quiet, just for a beat, then launched into the speech I'd already rehearsed in my head. I was emotional. I didn't mean half of what I said. "You've made your point, but I'm your mother." That word again. Like it was a crown she could put on and expect people to kneel. I let her talk. Let her spin the usual tapestry of self-pity and revisionist history. She cried. Real or fake, I couldn't tell anymore. Then she asked if she could meet my daughter. She should know where she comes from. That was the moment the switch flipped. My voice didn't rise. It lowered. I said, "She knows where she comes from. A mother who sees her. A father who stayed." That's more than I ever got. Silence on the other end. I continued, slower now, so the words would stick. "You told the world I was no longer your son. You made that decision. You don't get to reverse it now that I'm someone you can brag about." She said, "I was hurt. I was trying to push you to be better." I almost laughed. But instead, I said, "You didn't push me to be better. You pushed me away. There's a difference." Then I told her the one thing I'd carried for years. The thing that had lived under my skin like a splinter. All I ever wanted was for you to see me, just as I was. Not who you wanted me to be. You couldn't do that. So now you'll see me from afar. That's your view. That's what you earned. She begged then. Actually begged. "Please, let me fix this. Let me in." But I was done letting people in who only showed up when it served them. I ended the call with the same words she once used on me. "I no longer see you as my family." Click. No screaming. No final insult. Just a calm goodbye backed by years of silence she thought she could undo with a few wet tears and an old photo. Afterward, I sat at the edge of my bed for a long time. Mira came in, sat beside me, didn't say a word. I leaned into her shoulder and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. What I felt was something purer, like closure, but sharper, like I'd just locked the last door of a burning house and finally turned to walk away. That night, I told my daughter a new story at bedtime, one I made up on the spot, about a tree that grew in bad soil but still reached the sun. She asked if the tree was lonely. I said no. The tree made its own forest. She smiled and drifted off before I finished. I kissed her forehead and stepped into the hallway, where Mira was waiting. She didn't ask what I said on the call. She just took my hand. And I knew. This was the family that mattered. The one I'd built. The one I chose. Some people think revenge is a loud act. A public explosion. Courtroom scenes. Viral videos. But real revenge, the kind that matters, is quiet. It lives in the choices you make when no one's watching. The peace you feel when you don't have to flinch at a name. The life you build without needing anyone's permission to exist in it. That's how I knew it was over, not when I told her off, not when I watched security escort her out, but when I stopped checking the rearview mirror to see if she was still following me. I wasn't running anymore. I was free. 6 months after the call, we moved out of state. New house. New air. Our daughter started preschool and I took a new position. Still CEO, but with a bigger territory, more responsibility, less noise. No one here knew the past I came from. No one called me the factory kid or the dropout. They just saw the man in the meetings, the leader in the room. It was strange at first, being seen without having to be explained. But it felt right. Like maybe I had earned this version of myself. Like I wasn't wearing borrowed success. I was home in it. Every so often, I'd get a message from someone still orbiting her world. An aunt asking for photos. A cousin saying, "You should come home sometime." But I never replied. Not because I hated them. I just finally understood something simple. If someone doesn't protect your name when you're absent, they don't deserve access to you when you're present. My mother had her audience. She had her narrative. I had no interest in editing it for her. Let her keep her story. I had mine. One day, while cleaning out old files, I found the screenshot. The message. "All my children are successful except you." I stared at those words, and for the first time, they didn't hurt. They felt like a fossil. A relic from a world I no longer lived in. I showed it to Mira, not for validation, but because I needed to witness the full arc. She read it, her jaw tight, then looked at me and said, "She was wrong, and you proved it without even trying to." I didn't say anything. I just nodded and closed the folder. Some chapters don't need to be burned. They just need to be filed away and never reopened. On my daughter's 5th birthday, we had a small backyard party. Balloons, simple cake, a bubble machine that kept choking on wind. She ran up to me with icing on her nose and said, "Daddy, who's in our family?" I paused. Mira looked at me from across the table, a question in her eyes. I squatted down, met my daughter at eye level, and said, "Our family is the people who love us on the hard days. The people who see all of us and stay." She thought about it, then nodded like I'd just confirmed something she already believed. "Okay," she said, "then you're my forever family." And in that moment, something healed in me that I hadn't even known was still broken. The truth is, I never got the apology. She never wrote again. Maybe she thinks I'm cruel. Maybe she tells people I shut her out for no reason. That's fine. Let her. I didn't choose this ending to hurt her. I chose it to protect what I built. Myself, my family, my future. And that doesn't require permission from anyone, especially not someone who saw my worth only after it made the news. I used to carry her absence like a wound. Now it feels more like a scar. Still there, still visible, but no longer bleeding. And when people ask about my story, I tell them the truth, not the whole truth, not always, but the part that matters. I came from a place that didn't see me, and I build a life where I never have to feel invisible again. Sometimes, that's all the revenge you need. If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you that silence can be strength and choosing peace over permission is its own kind of victory, then stay connected. Subscribe for more stories that don't just entertain. They reveal, they heal, and they speak the truths we're often told to bury. This is where the erased find their voice. See you soon in the next story.